Hello there, I'm John Patrick for the Atlanta Regional Commission. Welcome. I'm with Chris Chovan, who is a transportation planner with the Atlanta Regional Commission. Chris, we're going to talk about the Southern Regional Accessibility Study. It covers a huge area, and why is it so important? What's its focus?
The last time we had a long-range transportation plan, a lot of needs were addressed on the southern part of our region that spanned pretty much from one side to the other. This study was born out of wanting to look at that corridor or that groups of corridors to see how traffic was flowing, how the development was going into the area, to make sure that we were addressing all the needs that were represented over the next 30 years.
Will the study, the Southern Crescent study, focus on just transportation or other areas too?
No, it's not a transportation study, or at least it's not envisioned to be just a transportation study. It's really looking at the entire development of the southern part of our region. Transportation is an element of that, but land use will also play an important role. Zoning and planning for the increase of population that is going to be approaching this area. Henry County, for example, on the southeast side of the region, is one of the fastest growing counties in our country. And so when we have that type of growth, and when we're faced with that type of growth upcoming, we've got to look at it holistically, kind of a chicken and the egg situation. If we build the road, do we develop the land use around that, or do we develop the land use before we go in and do our investments?
And this is critical because we've seen a lot of growth in the northern part of the region.
That's absolutely right. And if you do kind of a comparison of what the way the north side developed over, say, the late 70s through the 90s, and really still continuing today, it started out being very piecemeal. You know, commercial has to be in a certain area, residential has to be in a certain area, and then all of a sudden the roads and the transit systems get overburdened, and so we're kind of retroactively trying to go back and fix all of these problems. With the Southern Regional Accessibility Study, we have the opportunity, a unique opportunity really, to step in and try to look at this development and investment now before we start to see a massive growth curve going into that part of the region.
Now, because of the Atlanta Regional Commission, was it easy to get all the community leaders together to talk about this or to get input on this?
Well, when it comes to regional, it's not easy. We'll just call it that. But once we went over went and visited each local government and told them what we were doing and why we were doing it, and really told them what they would get out of it. We weren't there to tell them how to do their land use or how to do their development. We were there to coordinate what they have planned. They have to do a long-range comprehensive land use plan and comprehensive transportation plans. And so we were going to use those elements to feed kind of a regional or sub-regional, as it were, element, so that we get, at the regional level, connectivity addressed. We have land use addressed and that type of thing in the southern part.
Now, when did this study start? What is the timeline?
The study actually started last fall and is ongoing right now. It's in needs assessment, which is looking at where the areas that need the most help in way of road connectivity, or if they're seeing log jams or bottlenecks at certain intersections, or the lack of a transit connection or something along that line. There are public meetings scheduled here in the summer, say I think it's midsummer. And then the study itself is due to last through next spring, so the spring of 2007. So it's about an 18-month process, which is probably about halfway through right now.
Well, now, is it too early to have learned anything as yet?
It is a little early. With your starting into needs assessment, that's when we're going to learn. I mean, that's when we're going to understand what are the traffic flows. You know, where are people going? Where are they coming from? Is it majority south to north? Is it majority east to west? I mean, and that way we can get a better handle on where the development's going, where the traffic patterns are going, so that we can then address our solutions to fit, you know, and to tailor each of these areas.
Now, are we hopefully going to see more multi-use development in the Southern Crescent?
I think without a doubt. I think that is kind of the direction that this region is beginning to go. It's a situation where you don't want to get into that same rut like we talked about a moment ago with the north side, where you have very segregated development going in certain areas, and then the investments in transportation having to kind of catch up to those. We want to kind of look at it where if we have a transit stop, for example, or a station for a rail line, for example, that we put some high density development around that, residential, commercial, or residential on top of a shop of some sort, like a dry cleaners or an ice cream store, so that we have the opportunity to put people where they work or put people where they don't have to necessarily use their car to get anywhere. They can go shop right down the street, that type of thing.
Now, I understand that like 61, correct me if I'm wrong, 61% of the area is vacant.
That is correct.
Why is that important? What
Well,
does that mean?
it's a very important thing. When you come to development, there's a big difference between, greenfield development, which is when you're actually going in for the first time and knocking down trees or tearing up the grass or whatever the situation would be, versus other types of development, which would be ripping down an existing structure and starting all over again, with a new structure. With this type of, large amount of undeveloped land, it really gives us kind of a good template that we can look at setting some aside. There's already some that's going to have to be set aside due to wetlands or the lack of soils, water, rocks in the soil, for example, where we can't develop. There's just no way to put that in there. But, that gives us the opportunity to set aside a lot of land for park space, for green space, for trail buffers, whatever, or stream buffers, or whatever it is that you want to look at.
I see. Well, there are like 2.5 million people in that area, roughly, now.
Roughly.
Now, growth is a big consideration here. How is it going to impact the people that live there now?
The study itself, I think, is going to look at, they've already got stuff moving into that part of the region. You're getting the types of developments at major intersections. You're getting, subdivisions being built all around these areas. This study is going to kind of look at those as part of a bigger picture. Again, it's looking at connectivity and it's looking at development around investment, transportation investment. For example, there is a commuter rail line that's being scheduled between Atlanta and Lovejoy. That goes right into the heart of where this study is looking. What I think this study will do is actually look at what are our reinvestment or investment that we can make in that corridor for higher density development, or tying into that rail line with perhaps a local bus system or trails and sidewalks, even road improvements, if that's what it takes in order to
green spaces, whatever.
Exactly, whatever it takes to feed that rail line, because the goal again is to free up congestion, increase the mobility, and really try to get people out of their cars. It's a little bit of a behavior issue involved, but it's not forcing anybody to do what they don't want to do. It's providing them an option. If they don't feel like riding in the car that day, if they want to catch up on reading or asleep, then they can hop on the train and they don't have to worry about sitting in stop and go traffic.
So Chris, public input is really important on this, I'm sure. How can people find out more about this particular study?
Well, they have several ways that they can go about getting more information. Of course, they can go to the Atlanta Regional website, atlantaregional.com. They can also contact the staff at ARC and get more information. There's also an opportunity to write letters or faxes to us, or emails. So there's a variety of different ways that the public can be involved. There's also public meetings that are held periodically throughout the study, as well as stakeholder meetings and other various ways that they can contact us.
Thank you, Chris. And as Chris just told you, for more information, visit the Atlanta Regional Commission's website at www.atlantaregional.com.